Welcome back, friends, to another weekly video. This week I want to share with you a more personal story. There's going to be times in your life when things happen to you that become pivotal moments that impact the rest of your life. Well, this story is one of those moments for me, which was the first time I bounced a check. This story happened 20 years ago when I bounced my first check. And to be perfectly honest, I bounced a few checks before I figured out how a checking account worked. And you have to realize I started working when I was really young. So I had my first job when I was 15 years old. And so I always had a savings account and a checking account and did my own banking. And if you remember back then, people wrote checks a whole lot more than they do today. People didn't even have those little debit cards to use. You would just write checks. But for someone like me, who was still learning and who didn't really understand how a checking account worked, it was very complicated. So when you deposit money into your account, it takes a while for the bank to process it for you to actually use the money. And when you write a check to somebody else, it takes them a while to cash the check. So even if you're checking your account balance regularly, you still have to keep track of all of these moving pieces. And if you screw things up, the bank charges you a ton of fees. The problem was nobody taught me how any of this worked. I had to figure it all out on my own. My parents didn't talk to me about money. The school system didn't teach you about money. I had to figure it all out, and I screwed it up a bunch of times. So right around this same time, I found out that my grandmother was dying of cancer. So my grandmother was someone who smoked a lot. She was someone who smoked all day long. And so she had developed lung cancer. And it was one of those situations where she went into the doctor and the doctor told her she had 2 months to live. The cancer had spread throughout her body and there was nothing they could do. I don't know if you've ever experienced this in your life, where you found out that somebody close to you is about to die. Something very interesting happens, and it's almost like they get this instant clarity about life. And it's like everything that comes out of their mouth is brilliant. And I am so grateful that I got to spend some time with my grandmother before she passed away. So all of this was happening right around the same time I was struggling with my checking account. And to put this into some context, my grandparents lived out in the wilderness. So they lived in this small town in Oregon. And the town was about 1,000 people. They lived in this home that was surrounded by beautiful forests. So here I am. I'm out in nature. I'm spending time with my grandmother who is dying. And I am sharing all of the problems that I'm dealing with. So I'm talking about how I'm bouncing checks, how I don't understand why it's happening, how I don't understand how banks work, how I don't understand why banks are charging all these fees. My money was a mess. So my grandmother is listening to all of this, and she says something to me that was very simple. She says, "Zach, if you can figure out the money part of life, your life gets so much better." That was a moment that changed the rest of my life. Because it was a really simple idea, but it changed the way that I think about money. It gave me power over my money situation because it told me that these money problems I was having, they're all solvable with a little bit of education. But not only that, it's not only that the money problem is solvable, it created this connection in my mind that if I solved the problem, it leads to a better life. I know there's a lot of people out there these days that are struggling with money. The reason why I wanted to make this video and share this story is because I come on here on YouTube once a week and I post a video about money. And I think it's really easy to misunderstand what I'm doing here. It's easy to just see me as some expert up here just telling you what to do with money. But the reality is, I'm a regular person just like you. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've made all the same mistakes that everybody else has made. So if you're struggling with money, I've been there. I know what you're going through. And I can tell you the same thing that my grandmother told me. If you can figure out the money part of life, your life gets so much better. So whatever struggle you're going through, just know it can also be a pathway to get to an incredible life. I'm Zach from Wolves in Finance. Thank you so much for watching. Let's go out and make some money.